Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. Today we're going to be doing another State of the Gaming, because I think it's important to talk about the state of gaming today, where it's been, where it is, and where it's going, because this does affect us. This isn't just a hobby, this can also be a career or a job for certain people, whether you're officially in the space or whether you're some content creator. Um, and yeah, this is $100 billion industry now, and it continues to grow. And this affects everybody. And they estimate there's like 2 billion gamers now. There's a lot of us that all play games, all across different platforms, including mobile, etc. But this is a pretty big gaming space, so it's important to talk about this. So I did see something that I wasn't going to do a state of gaming this soon because I just did another one on AI. If you're interested in that one, go ahead and take a look at that. And there's a playlist of all of the states of gaming I've ever done on YouTube at Gaming Garbage 22. You can also follow me too if you wish at over on Twitch at Don't Tread on the. But yeah, I saw something and I was like, this is really going to change the industry. And this has nothing necessarily to do with a company per se, but more about the state of the industry itself. And so, this is the game digitization that's happening, where games are no longer physical, they're just becoming digital. And so, the reason I want to talk about this has been happening for quite some time, and they are kind of generally pushing it that way, especially the console makers. And indie developers too, because it's cheaper and easier for them. But something came up to where stores are starting to remove and phase out physical media from their stores. And this is why I want to talk about this, because this includes gaming too. Because some of us, we go to Target or Fred Meyer or Walmart, and we go buy a physical copy of a game, or Best Buy or something like that. We go buy a physical copy, and the reason we like to buy physical copies is because we actually own it. We actually possess it. We're able to return it. Refunds are actually harder to get, but we can return the game if we don't like it, or we can sell it back, or we can, sell it to someone else, third party, or let a friend borrow it, or you actually possess and own the data yourself. It's not just on a server or something. And once you get the disc, changed versions of the game like on digital, well, you still have like the original version of the game. And in some cases, some people like that. But like, we just got some news that Best Buy announced that there will no longer be any movies or shows sold in their stores by Q1 of 2024. And Walmart just announced that they're going to be phasing out physical video games by the end of 2024. And they're going to do it in quarters. They're going to slowly phase it out. Exactly how they're going to do that, I don't know. But again, this is important to talk about because, again, some of us, this is how we get our games, is we like to buy the physical stuff. And again, this isn't just video games. This is also movies and shows, too. And there is something to be said for, instead of paying for a service every month, actually just paying for the game while it's on sale just one time is really worth it for a lot of the older games. I mean, you can still buy digital too. But yeah, we'll get into all of that. So, as far as we know with Best Buy, as of Q1, so the end of March, movies and TV shows are going to be gone from their store. They're going to better utilize that space with something else in their stores. And this is going to be corporate-wide. And so it's going to be every single store. So if there's a particular movie or TV show that you're looking for, it would be a really good idea on Black Friday, or maybe sales during Christmas or something like that, to actually take the time to look. Because that's just going to be one store that's going to, basically phase that out in the next 5 months. And if one store's doing it, well, there's going to be others. That's usually the trend. Now, stores, especially brick and mortar stores, they have to get rid of the inventory that's there, and if they don't quickly enough, they'll kind of downsize and eventually they'll get rid of it completely. And this is what Walmart is doing, is that, again, they announced that they're going to phase out all of their games by the end of 2024. So Q4 of 23, and then the 4 quarters of 24, they're going to get rid of them all. Now, I don't know if this means that they're just going to get rid of physical games, if they're still going to have the little cards you can buy for some PC stuff, or buy some of the digital games if you wish, and you use a redeem code. I don't know if this is also going to get rid of gaming accessories, controllers, headsets, hard drives. I also don't know if this is also going to phase out consoles. So it's not really clear yet. I'm sure we'll get some clarification on that later this year, probably after the holidays, but I would think definitely by January or February of next. And you'll definitely hear it from me. That detail I'll implement into gaming news as I see it. But yeah, this is a change that's coming, and really it just comes down to a lack of sales, theft, as that's why everything at Walmart is behind something now that you have to have unlocked. And then also, we can probably expect more announcements after the holidays. So again, if we already have 2 stores within a couple of weeks of each other saying they're going to phase out physical media, we're probably going to see that from Fred Meyer, though they kind of have a more dedicated kind of camera sound section. But so does Walmart, and so does Best Buy. They kind of have designated places in their stores, and it can cost a little bit to kind of renovate or find something else to replace it. But ultimately, stores have to think of it as a business model: is that product in their store making money, and is that section of the store making money? And if it's not, they got to change stuff, because they still got to pay for the electricity, they still got to pay for the taxes, they still got to pay for just the use of the building, all of the employees, etc. And so if it's not making enough money, they got to make changes so that they can stay in business. And this is ultimately why a lot of rental stores disappeared, like Blockbuster. There's literally one left in the world, which is now like a historical place, or kind of that you can go see. And people come from all over the world actually to see Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon, which is crazy. But there's also Hollywood Video, and they also owned Game Crazy. And that was a company where they sold games, but they also rented. So Game Crazy was, you could buy the games that you wanted, and then Hollywood Video was a video and game rental store. And we're talking shelves and shelves. This is probably past before some of your guys' time, but well, imagine walking into a store like, let's say the size of, let's say a third or a fourth of the size of Walmart, and it is just loaded with shelves of movies that you can rent. I mean, it was pretty crazy. A lot of them too are VHS. I saw the change over to DVD, and then they started adding a little bit of Blu-ray in there. But eventually, the store couldn't stay open because there wasn't enough money being made. People could buy the movie, generally speaking, for cheaper. And also there were these streaming services. And the biggest one that really came to be was Netflix. And what is so crazy is Netflix came to Blockbuster and said, hey, are you willing to buy us? And we can create a multifaceted platform, and we can all generate a lot of money. And Blockbuster laughed them out of the room and said, no, that's crazy. No one is going to pay you money for you to send them DVDs, because that's how Netflix started. It wasn't even a streaming service. It started as them physically sending you DVDs in this kind of specific Netflix, box or whatever that you'd get in the mail. And then when you were done with it, you would return it. And you would just rent it for a week at a time, and it would get charged to your account or whatever. Well, eventually they turned it into digital, and then now we know where Netflix is today, along with Apple TV and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, and I mean, it's totally blown up into something else. And I really see this coming for the gaming space. So let's dig into it a little more. So what all does this mean, and how does this affect the gaming industry? So whether we like it or not, physical is, we're stepping into a new, what would you call it? kind of like a new tier or a new iteration of the next stage of physical media disappearing, including video games. So eventually the trend will take us to a digital only world. And I don't necessarily like that. Excuse me. I like to be able to own my own stuff. I like possessing my own stuff. For me, that's really ownership. It's not just having a piece of paper or a title. It's actually me possessing something, and that is my ownership. Whether that's my TV or my home or my cars or whatever. So there's legal ramifications with some of that, of course. But yeah, being able to own your own stuff. There are some pullbacks. You can become a hoarder. You also have to have a lot of space for all of that physical stuff. But at least you own it, and digital, you can also own the digital as well. You can possess that data, like on a hard drive, but it's not quite the same as actually having a designated data on a disk. And, I just grew up in that era, and I'll probably always feel that way. I mean, I remember the floppy disk. I remember VHS. I remember MP3 players and Blackberries, and the iPod, which was basically the first, kind of pre-jump to the smartphone that we have today. But yeah, I just like having physical media. But yeah, I do understand we'll eventually go to digital only because it's ultimately cheaper. But how do we know this? How do we know that digital only is eventually coming? Well, we've seen diskless consoles. So we've seen some like the Steam Deck or the Stadia where everything is streamed to you. That's pretty futuristic today. But there's been also several consoles that don't even have a disk drive, or they're being made without one. So like right now, all PlayStation 5 Slims are going to be made without a disk drive. And if you want to, you can buy an external hard drive, which is another $80 from them, that can work with your machine, and then you can play your physical discs. We also know that all of the Xbox refresh in 25, those are going to be diskless. And so, yeah, kind of a bummer. We also know too that the Series S right now, which was made in 2019, that also doesn't have a disk drive. So we've already seen diskless diskless machines. And they're already pushing toward this because if they can basically cut out a drive or make something a little less complicated or remove something, they ultimately save cost. And again, this is what it's really down to. We've also seen right now that in the PC world of gaming, there are no more discs. Think of that, folks. Now, I'm not a PC gamer. I was for quite some time, and I remember when you could still buy PC games. Like Far Cry 2 or Far Cry 3, those were great games. Some of the Halos, some of the Warhammer 4000 series, those were great. The orange box. You could buy these and you could have a physical disc. You also used to be able to buy physical discs of your operating system from Microsoft, which was also really, really nice. You also had physical discs for your Microsoft Suite, so you can have Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and etc. But like all of that is basically gone digital now. And so yeah, in the realm of PC, there almost aren't any discs anymore on any level made for computers. It's all downloaded right through the internet onto your computer, and that's just how it is. Most physical copies of AAAs and AA's, well, I shouldn't say most, I should say many. But right now, today, a lot of physical copies don't even have all of the data on the disk. So you don't actually possess the whole game, like Starfield, like Jedi Survivor, like Modern Warfare 3, that's coming out in November. Modern Warfare 2 was another example. That didn't even have a gig on the disk. You had to download the other 100 gigs offline. Lords of the Fallen was another example. That was a game that literally just came out. And it's incredibly frustrating, and it's not like they can't put all of that on the disc, but they just choose not to. And so that's a trend that we're continuing to see, unfortunately, as well. Is not only are consoles diskless, not only is PC already diskless, basically in every iteration of the word, most AAA and AA games that make physical copies for you and I to buy that really want them, we still don't even possess all of the game data, just the base data. We're not talking patches. We're literally talking that parts of the game or half of the game, like in Lords of the Fallen's case, or that we only got 1 gig in Modern Warfare 2, we don't actually own that data. We don't possess it. So we still have to have internet connections and all that stuff in order to actually play the game. And in my opinion, that really kind of just renders the physical copy already. Because, I can still trade it, I can still resell it, I can still hand it over to somebody else and let them play it. But I really want to buy a physical copy so that I can actually possess it. And if not all of the game data is on there, I'm already losing that ability to do that, which sucks. There's also another way to think of it is there's already a lot of games right now that already aren't physical ever. So like Overwatch 2, Apex Legends, a lot of indie games like Hard Space Shipbreaker. I was waiting for that to become a physical copy. It was supposed to, but COVID kind of messed that up, and so it never came out as a physical copy. And so digital was the only option. And there's a lot of games that are becoming that way, is that they really wouldn't, again, it doesn't benefit them because they got to put more cost up front. And then they also, can't control as much. I mean, imagine if you could control 100% of your market. Well, you wouldn't want people to have to have physical copies. You'd want everything to be digital so that they'd have to re-download it or re-buy it or whatever. Or you'd always have to have a connection, with that company. And then they could, track you and track your spending and see how you're playing and all of that stuff and get information off of the servers. And that's all that this is. It's really just a way for them to control everything, and to market to you to death, which is horrible. Another issue with going completely digital only or diskless is that older games ultimately disappear when they're delisted. So if the servers don't want you to be able to play that anymore, or the servers don't even run, or let's say you have a subscription service and the game is removed now from the subscription service, well, ultimately, you don't get to play those. And with digital games, if they're digital only and they're just removed from the ability for you to download them again, well, those games are basically gone. And we've had a lot of those. A lot of the older ones are disappearing. There is some hope, though. Currently on Xbox, and they're also working with PlayStation to make a game, and this is also on PC, but you can buy Antstream Arcade. And they're a service that's taking a whole bunch of older games for different game consoles. They currently have 1,500 old retro arcade games, and basically you pay an annual fee, or you can pay a lifetime fee, which I think the lifetime is $80. And you get all of the games, you get access for all of the games they currently have, and all of the games they're going to add in the future. The CEO expressed that they want to continue to add to the space, continue to work with publishers and other companies that own these IPs to bring the games to Antstream Arcade, so that they can continue to make a better platform. But it's basically the Netflix of gaming. And except it's all older games. And there's some pretty good ones on there too. There's some good ones that I played with. But yeah, I really hope they can get thousands and thousands and thousands on there. I think that'd be so awesome. And I do eventually plan to get Antstream Arcade, but I'm waiting to see if there's a sale on Black Friday. If not, I might just wait a little longer because money is still pretty tight. And Antstream Arcade isn't super high on my list. Excuse me. I'm getting pretty tired. It's like 1:30 in the morning. Also, with digital only, there's this constant internet connection that's necessary. So again, it's very difficult to be offline. We've also had issues with companies wanting a 24-hour kind of like connection check to make sure that you're connected to them, or that you're connected to online. And all of this has to do with just tracking and marketing, folks. I mean, the more data they have, the better they can figure out how to manipulate you to get you to spend money. And unfortunately, that's the sad truth. And if you don't actually own it, then they have more influence over your game than you do. Or your car if you lease it, or your TV if you rent it, etc. And so companies are really starting to figure this out, and they would rather provide you a service than a product. And this kind of eventually leads me into my next thing too, is that, like with the older games, it's not just the fear of them being delisted, it's eventually that the physical and the old consoles won't even work after a while, because they're not making new copies of those discs for that game, like Time Splinters, or like Dino Crisis, or G-Police, or Future Cop. Like, those aren't around, right? And to find copies now of those games is incredibly difficult. Also, the console to play those games on, they're not making new ones of those either. So you can still find spare parts for some of those components, most of those components. But like the motherboards are getting difficult for some. Like the original Xbox. Or like the PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2. Or maybe even the NES or the Super Nintendo if you want to go back further. And so this is it will get to a point where the physical will break down. And then you're screwed. When that disk drive goes bye-bye, when the motherboard fries, when you can't, your cartridge for your save files disappears, or breaks, then, yeah, what are you going to do? Are you willing to spend another $100 to buy another Xbox? Or a PlayStation or whatever? Because some of these games, they're getting pretty expensive. And the consoles too. And it's because there's just a limited quantity. And there's no way around that. And over time, they will continue to get more expensive. Eventually, until there's just not really many left. And, well, that's just how it is, unfortunately. Let's see, with digital only, online servers. And so, again, when it's digital only, usually you have to be hooked up to the internet. But like if they shut the game down or the game does horrible, maybe you love it to death, like Anthem. Some people still really like that game, but the game's basically dead, and the servers I don't even think are up anymore. But yeah, if the servers go down, then, well, your multiplayer doesn't work. You may not be able to get your patch that you need. And the game can, too, just be completely rendered unplayable. It's just done. And it all depends on how the game is built and made. But if you constantly need an update or an online connection to play a game because it's multiplayer, or that it has to be hooked up to the servers all the time, or it gets just delisted again in the first place, then yeah, that's it. At least with a physical game, you can still play the single player part of the game. Like if any of the Call of Duties. If multiplayer or matchmaking disappeared, at least you can still play the campaigns, because at least the games are built that way. And like Shepard and I did, we played World at War, which was really fun. And that's a really old game. That's like 2008. But even before they turned the matchmaking back on, allowing multiplayer again, we played the campaign and had a great time. And so yeah, depending on the game, you can lose parts of the game, or the game just not even be playable anymore, like Black Ops 4. I mean, when they finally shut that one off, if they haven't already, the whole game is just dead. Because they didn't have a campaign, they didn't have a regular multiplayer, really. They kind of had zombies, but again, it wasn't my favorite. It was really just, pre-Warzone, like they have today. Also, with digital only, there's also stronger anti-piracy stuff, and that ultimately leads to less liberty. And all of this ultimately comes down to just less liberty in general. Is again, if you don't own it, if you don't possess it, then you don't have really control over it. The companies do, and the companies are making decisions best in their best interest, not in yours. And all liberty is just you being able to be free to make the decision. That is the simplest way to think about it. And again, if you don't have control, well then you don't have the ability to make the decisions. And that's why someone like myself, we like the physical games. I can choose to put my disc in anytime I want and it plays, whether it's delisted or not. Maybe the servers won't work, but I can still actually play the game. But like, they're not going to be expanding their backwards compatibility much anymore. I think PlayStation's going to work away from that, and Xbox has already stated they're not doing that anymore. And then too, there's also just some of the games are horrible for the most part, but maybe you still like them, or maybe you still enjoy playing them. But yeah, if they're delisted, well, you can't play them anymore. But yeah, this whole thing, it's taking its time. But like, digital is eventually coming. Also, with digital only, this leads to more gaming services, cloud gaming and streaming. And so we've already seen this with like Xbox Game Pass. We've already seen what PlayStation has done with PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Ultimate or Elite or whatever it is that you get all of these games in a package that you pay for every month. We've also seen very, very cheap games on Steam. And also the Epic Store also has a type of service that they provide for PC gamers. And some other entities have tried getting into the space, but they haven't done very well, and so they've basically failed. Or they plan to get out of the space. And even Microsoft, if their Game Pass doesn't procure the amount of revenue that they're ultimately looking for by 2028, well, then they're going to quit trying to dig into PC, and they're going to get rid of cloud streaming. And they'll just stick to Xbox. And they'll keep Game Pass just for Xbox. And they'll keep working on making Xbox games. So I did want to clear that up too, is that there's been some things that I continue to see, which is frustrating, is that people are taking a Phil Spencer quote out of context and saying that Microsoft will just get out of gaming completely by 2028 if they don't see enough revenue or stuff out of Game Pass. And no, that's not what he said. It's getting out of cloud gaming if it doesn't take off, and if they don't see enough procurement or enough numbers through PC. Xbox, they're going to keep that going. They've invested too much. They just spent $69 billion on Activision Blizzard, which they'll be able to start benefiting from next year. And but yeah, they're not going to quit. Also, too, in the far future, eventually there's going to be too many streaming services or gaming services, and companies will compete. And as we have recessions like right now, eventually some companies will win over other ones, and so we'll have to see mergers, or some of these companies are going to become bankrupt, and ultimately this starts to create monopolies in any space, not just gaming. And so we've already seen this happen with TVs, shows, and movies, is that ultimately instead of all of those being independent, TV shows, movies, and stuff, is that they've all been bundled and packaged into different streaming services. We've had all of these streaming services compete now, like Netflix and Disney and etc. And now some of these are really having a problem. All of them are having a problem to a point. But eventually some of these have also just completely failed. Like Roku basically is still technically there, but it just can't get into the space like it used to. And almost nobody even thinks about it anymore. Paramount Plus is having the same issue. And again, the quality definitely goes down with these streaming services. We've seen that in Netflix, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, COVID Plus. I mean, it's just stupid. And they're more excited about pushing out the content as a quantity instead of having quality content. And we see this too, even just on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and everything else, is that they're just more interested in getting views so that they can ultimately make more money instead of actually creating real content for their viewers and creating a kind of trusting relationship between themselves and their audience. Because again, it's just all about money. And I think that's really frustrating. We've seen this kind of merging behavior in banking and finance. Again, every time we've had a recession. So we had one in 2000s. That was crazy. A lot of companies lost their pants. That really kind of hurt the banking system a little bit. Another really big one was 2008. Again, we used to have tens of thousands of banks. Roughly 10,000 different banking enterprises before 2008. And then after 2008 happened, we basically cut that in half. And so we had a huge consolidation. And then even more so, we've been having that again. And even right now, more banks are closing, more banks are merging. And that's just part of the part of the nature of recessions, folks, is that the mergers happen. And I see this in the gaming space with the streaming services. There's a whole bunch that are going to try to branch out to stuff. And eventually, they'll either merge or they'll just quit altogether. And so, yeah, ultimately, this digitization of gaming, it's just going to step into the next tier of ultimately making physical games disappear. And I'm already on the fence myself. Is it really worth buying that physical copy if I don't have all of the disc data? I don't know. That's mainly why I want to buy it. Elden Ring had all of the disc data. Armored Core had 90% of it, I think. But again, they're also made by the same company, From Software. But a lot of companies today, it's not all on there. And we're having a push for streaming services. We're having a further push to keep things online, to download stuff. But do I think it's better for the space ultimately? No. But do I think we can stop it as a community? No. I don't think there's enough. We've already seen a huge amount of sales where basically half of the sales last year were already digital. And that's crazy. That's crazy. Also, we see now with every Black Friday for I don't know how many years now, is that there's actually more online sales than in-store sales. And so again, there's a digitization of even just shopping. So yeah, this is coming, folks. I mean, ultimately, if you want to keep your physical going, you gotta buy parts for your consoles. You probably want to buy duplicates of your disc just in case it wears out or something crazy happens. You gotta keep those controllers fixed. And if you don't know how to fix that stuff, at some point eventually you're going to be screwed. That stuff isn't going to work anymore. And so, and I feel for you, I really do, but yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. There's maybe a few games I really want to buy physical copies of, but I'm kind of at that point where most of them, I'm okay with them being digital. It's going that way, and I already don't own all of the data on top of it, in most cases. And then even in some cases, I can still buy the digital on sale for cheaper than what I could ever buy it at a retail store physically, including GameStop. And I gotta mention this too about GameStop, folks, is that even GameStop is ultimately going to fail, because if the trend is up to buy digital, eventually there won't be physical copies, And the stores are already seeing, with the demand that they've had, they're already seeing that they don't have enough physical copies to keep their shelves full. Finally, the one in my town has some full shelves, but for a good, 6 to 8 months there were some gaps, or there really wasn't a lot of inventory. Not a lot was shifting around either. I basically had the same stuff every week, or every month even. And GameStop is also going to have a problem because, again, the push is to get away from physical, and that's what they make their money on. That's their business model. 80% of their business is reselling physical copies. And yeah, when those go away, they don't have a business anymore. And we've already seen, too, if you walk into your GameStop and you look at how much toys they have, it's way more than it used to be 5 years ago. And it was almost non-existent 10 years ago. It was almost all video games. And they've tried different programs, okay? They've tried adding electronics like iPhones and iPads and iPods and other types of electronics. They've also tried adding toys and shirts and puzzles and statues, and again, it's eventually not going to work, folks. Because people ultimately, for GameStop, they want to buy the game. And if they can't buy the physical game anymore, why would they go to GameStop to buy a digital game when they can just buy the game from the store in the comfort of their own pajamas and home? So if you work at a GameStop, I would look for a different job. And I remember when DLC really started taking off, when digital really started taking off, because I used to work there. I worked there for about 3.5 years, quite a while ago now, and well before COVID. But I started figuring this out, and it's just like, good grief, GameStop, its days are numbered. It eventually won't be around. And if we're already seeing some companies wanting to phase out physical media, well, GameStop has a shot there. But I'm even seeing that my GameStop's having a hard time getting their shipments in when they're supposed to. So I've pre-ordered 2 games this year, and both games weren't there on launch day, which is incredibly frustrating, including Lords of the Fallen. I went to go pick it up and it wasn't there. I was like, what? They used to get that freight days before. They'd have it in the back, and then on launch day they'd pull it all out and it'd be ready to sell, right? Well, they're not even getting them on the same day anymore, which is incredibly frustrating. Which reminds me, I still got to go to GameStop and cancel my pre-order of Lords of the Fallen, because I picked it up somewhere else where they had it. They had a physical copy, and I bought it. So then, ultimately, what do you guys think? I mean, did I miss some stuff, or there's some things that you've heard of too as well? And this should kind of be an open forum, folks. I encourage the comments, and we should, talk about stuff like this. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, too, if you enjoy the content, go besides just liking and sharing and subscribing and stuff. Also, actively share this with other people in your life that you know, family, friends, coworkers, whoever. If you enjoy the content, go ahead and share it with people. I ultimately think that's how this channel is going to grow the best. Also, too, you can still find me over at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee, and you can also find me over at YouTube where I archive everything at Gaming Garbage 22. Hopefully you guys are doing well, and I'll see you on the next one.